appreciating the senator for Kitui for coming up with this very progressive bill for several reasons. Most importantly, that it's an agricultural bill, and we all know agriculture is the most important sector in Kenya in terms of its contribution to the GDP, in terms of its employment. It employs the bulk of Kenyan population. In terms of providing food security, Mr. Speaker, sir, in a world which is becoming more and more integrated, we are opening up barriers of trade. Countries must take advantage of what we call comparative advantage. And Kenya, Mr. Speaker, its major comparative advantage vis-a-vis other countries is its agricultural potential. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the huge contribution of agriculture to the Kenyan economy, the investment by the government is never commensurate. You find that we invest more in things like infrastructure, which is positive. We invest in security, but rarely do we get commensurate investments in agriculture. And therefore, this is the move to the right direction. So let me start with the merits of this bill. Mr. Speaker, one merit of this bill is that it brings Mang's bill to the center of government agenda on matters agriculture. Mr. Speaker, for the longest time, when we talk of agriculture in this country, concentration has been in coffee, in tea, in milk, and I think it is high time we also diversify in other areas that can boost agriculture. And I agree with the Mang's bill now that it will get recognition. This bill will compel AFA to take into account matters Mang's beans. To me, that is important. I foresee a situation where the minister concerned with agriculture at the national level now being compelled to market externally Mang's bill, now being compelled to put out standards for Mang's bill. And that way, you will find these beans becoming more and more marketable and more grown in Kenya and protecting the farmer. Another major advantage concerning this bill, Mr. Speaker, is that at proposed Section 4, it confers certain duties to Agriculture and Food Authority. Further, at Section 5, it confers further duties on County Executive Committee, so that you have a situation where the national government is doing intervention for the growing up of this bean. Also, there is some role also given to the county government to promote the marketing of this. I'm also happy, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the proposal in proposed Section 6, which now compels the various government entities to give priority in products of Mang beans in government programs. Mr. Speaker, government usually have several programs. Let's say, for instance, the food relief. But when you look at the products that are used by government in food relief, you'll see more emphasis in beans, in maize, in rice. But I've never seen I'm not aware of a certain time where government distributed Mang bean. Just for the people who are watching out there, people want to know what is Mang bean. Mang bean is dengu. So allow me to use the term dengu for the purpose of the common mwananchi to understand. So rarely have we ever seen government distributing dengu to the wananchi. So if this law passes, you will see government purchasing dengu, taking out dengu to the wananchi, and therefore the prices will go up. We all know the importance of government in this economy. This is an economy that revolves around the government in terms of a huge allocation to the government, a huge government budget. So when government purchases dengu, then government distributes that dengu. Two things happen. Number one, the producer price will go up. You'll find farmers in Kitui and also in Murang'a. We have a huge region that has potentiality to grow dengue. The entire region stretching from Thika town to the entire Kakuzi region in Lower Gatanga, Idhanga ward, the entire Kimorori Wempa in that region called Maragua, the entire region called Makuyu in Maragua also, Kambiti, also location 20 in Kiharu, also parts of Gaturi in Kiharu, also parts of Lower Kandara. So all that region, I have no doubt, once government starts purchasing dengue, you will see now more farmers planting dengue. And now also on the demand side, because now that's an intervention on the supply side. On the demand side, you will find now people starting to consume more dengues in their homes. Currently, when people usually purchase beans when they want to make their stew, they purchase what we call minji. But now with dengue now getting more recognition via this law, I suspect the prices of dengue will go up, and that to me is positive. Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe the future of this country is somehow interconnected with the prospects of the so-called dry regions. Why? Because those dry regions have virgin lands. Those dry regions are waiting for irrigation. Once irrigation comes, you'll find food security will be embedded in this country. And therefore, dengue being a crop that can withstand harsh climatic conditions, it needs a lot of support. It's a crop in the so-called dry belt, and therefore, I support the philosophy underpinning this bill. But, Mr. Speaker, let me now point out areas of improvement, which my colleague who has brought this bill can consider. Number one, part 3, and maybe part 4 of this bill. The so-called the regulatory provisions. The regulatory provisions. You see, the reason why you find countries like America prospering is because they have very light regulations. Every time you bring regulation in a country, you tend to stifle development of industries. So therefore, I'm trying to convince my brother. Every time you hear a regulation, you must always look at it from a negative point of view. It is something that is going to be enacted by government, whose net effect, notwithstanding the original intention to assist that sector, regulations tend to whittle down economy. They tend to bring back, they tend to hold back. So the less regulated a sector is, the better it is. So for instance, you find here requirements for registration of growers. You find a requirement for licensing of marketers, processors, large scale. Refusal to issue a license. To me, that's a danger. Those are dangerous provisions from where I sit. They will tend now to create a parallel black market. It will mean a poor person in Kitui, he cannot even establish a small shamba of dengue without going to pay a license. That license, number one, will be expensive. I have no doubt government will put some fee for obtaining that license. Number two, it will be laborious to even procure that license. It will take 1 or 2 years, or you have to corrupt that official. Yeah? So you may say, okay, no, it is important you give out those licenses so that you standardized. But I'm telling you, based on my experience with government regulations, they always retard industries. Let me give you an example, my brother. Let me give you a good example. If you want to establish a hotel here in Nairobi or anywhere in this republic, how many licenses are you supposed to get from government? Almost 100. You have to pay, I don't know, you go to National Construction Authority, you get it. You go to environmental, what is it called? National Environmental Management Authority, another license. You go to public health another license. You go to city, the county, the authority, the local authority or the county government, another license. You go to the engineers, to the builders, another license. You go to alcohol, another license. Surely. I can tell you. By the way, Mr. Speaker, I want you to bring it to attention. There's a very good write-up by a very good scholar. I think he's from Latin America. He's called De Soto. You see, De Soto has argued very persuasively that governments, how they retard economic growth in third world countries by coming up with taxes and laborious processes. Ask any person wanting to put out a factory in this country how many licenses is supposed to put up. And I can tell you, the funny thing is, they will tell you, hey, we are telling you to obtain this license. Let's say, for instance, NEMA, so that we protect the environment. The truth is, there will be no single NEMA officer who will come up to your premises. You just go to the office, you give them something, then they give you a document. No single person will come there to do anything. So in short, every time I see a regulation, my blood runs cold. Let me tell you. Every time I see a law proposing a regulation, for me, my blood runs cold. And that is why I'm a great opponent for any forms of regulation in this country. These regulations are going to retard this sector. You may say, okay, you're bringing them in good faith. You want to bring standards. But I can tell you those licenses will be conduits for corruption. Let us make this sector lightly regulated. We make it lightly regulated. In fact, by the way, the other time I was thinking about philosophy of regulations in Kenya. Do you know what I was proposing to do? You say, you provide that.
What is Senator Pareno?
Mr. Speaker, I happen to sit in the delegated legislature.